There's an entire world living alongside ours right now that most people never think about. Not angels, not spirits. A separate creation entirely made from fire, with free will just like us, capable of good and evil, belief and disbelief, marriage, tribes, even entire generations passing down knowledge from one to the next. The Quran dedicates an entire chapter to them, 72 verses long. They're called the Jinn, and almost everything most people believe about them, from movies, from campfire stories, from things half-remembered from childhood, is either heavily exaggerated or simply wrong. Everything in this video comes directly from the Quran, specifically Surah al-Jinn, which is named entirely after them, and from authentic hadith collections like Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. Not folklore, not horror films, not stories passed down at sleepovers with no real source behind them. Let's start with the most basic question, the one everything else builds on. What actually are they and where did they come from? According to the Quran, Jinn were created from a smokeless flame of fire, while humans were created from clay, and angels were created from light. That single distinction explains a lot about them. Unlike angels, who were created only to obey and have no free will at all, Jinn have free will, exactly like humans do. They can choose to believe or disbelieve, follow guidance or reject it outright, do good or deliberately cause harm. The same moral test given to us was given to them first. The word jinn itself comes from an Arabic root meaning hidden or concealed, because unlike humans, they can see us clearly. But in their natural form, we typically cannot see them at all. The Quran confirms this directly, stating plainly that they and their tribe watch us from a place where we cannot see them. Jinn are described as living alongside us in this exact same world we occupy, often in places humans naturally avoid or simply overlook: ruins, deserted places, graveyards, and according to some hadith, even inside our own homes if those homes are left empty of the remembrance of Allah for too long. They have societies structured remarkably similarly to ours: tribes, families, marriage, and even generations that are born and eventually die, much like humans do, even though their lifespans are described as significantly longer than ours. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was sent as a messenger to both humans and jinn together. An entire surah of the Quran describes a group of jinn secretly listening to him recite the Quran one night, then returning to their own people afterward to spread the message they had just heard with their own ears. This is probably the single most common question people ask, and also the most exaggerated by pop culture and horror movies. Islamic scholars broadly agree, based on the Quran and Hadith, that jinn possession is genuinely possible. The Quran describes those touched by shaitan in a specific verse about people who deal in usury, comparing their confused, disoriented state to someone driven to madness by touch from the jinn. However, mainstream Islamic teaching draws a very important line here that's often ignored in popular culture. Not every illness, mood swing, or mental health struggle is possession. Scholars strongly warn against jumping straight to that conclusion, because doing so can lead people to avoid the real medical or psychological treatment they actually need for a real medical condition. Possession in mainstream Islamic teaching is treated as real but genuinely rare, and the recommended response in Islamic tradition isn't fear-based rituals or dramatic exorcism. It's specific Quranic recitation, particularly Ayat al-Kursi and the final two surahs of the Quran done calmly, privately, and consistently. Here's the part almost nobody ever hears, even people who grew up hearing plenty about jinn. Just like humans, jinn are divided by belief, not united in evil the way movies usually portray them. Surah al-Jinn describes an entire group of them who listened to the Quran being recited and said, word for word, "We have heard a wonderful Quran. It guides to the right path, and we have believed in it. They went on to describe their own society as being divided exactly like ours is. Some among them righteous and devout, some far from it, following completely different paths, just like people do in every human community. This means there are believing jinn, actively worshiping Allah with sincerity, and disbelieving jinn, rejecting Him entirely and causing harm where they can. The exact same test of free will given to all of humanity was given to them as well. In parallel, the most famous jinn in all of history isn't a monster from a horror movie at all. It's Iblis, who would later become known by the name Shaitan. Before his fall, Iblis is described in the Quran as having worshipped Allah with extraordinary devotion for an extremely long time, so much so that some scholarly interpretations describe him living and worshiping among the angels because of that devotion. Despite technically being a jinn by his original creation, everything changed in a single moment through one act of arrogance. When Allah commanded the angels, and Iblis along with them, to bow before the newly created Adam, every single angel obeyed instantly and without question. Iblis alone refused, arguing that he was inherently superior because he was made of fire, while Adam was made of mere clay. That one refusal, rooted entirely in pride rather than any disbelief in Allah's existence, is what caused his complete and permanent fall, proving that the distance between the highest devotion and total ruin can come down to a single moment of arrogance, nothing more. So the jinn aren't a horror movie plot device, and they were never meant to be understood that way. They're a parallel creation given the exact same test humans were given: free will, the ability to hear guidance clearly when it's presented to them, and the choice of whether to accept it humbly or reject it out of pride. Some believed the moment they heard just a few verses recited quietly at night, with no pressure and no audience. Others, despite centuries of devoted worship, fell completely because of a single moment of arrogance they never recovered from. It's worth sitting with that contrast for a moment. An entire lifetime, or in the case of Iblis, what may have been thousands of years of devotion, undone by one instant of refusing to submit. And on the other side, a small group of strangers hearing truth for the very first time in the middle of the night, accepting it instantly with no hesitation at all. Neither outcome depended on how long someone had been around or how much they had already done. The unseen world keeps returning to this same lesson over and over across every video in this series. Belief was never really about how much you've already done in the past. It's about the choice you're making right now, today, in this exact moment, regardless of everything that came before it. If this changed how you think about the unseen world, there's more waiting. Next, we're going somewhere even less talked about: Barzakh, the space between death and Judgment Day, and what actually happens there while you wait. Subscribe so you don't miss it.